Feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. Hi, everybody. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to episode 2 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. How to feel like you have it all. Now, before you think I have completely lost my mind, let me assure you that, much like you, I do not believe it is actually possible to have it all. What we're talking about today is a feeling, how to feel like you have it all, which, if we're honest with ourselves, is really what we're chasing. Okay, so today what we're going to do is talk about how to make the transition from a model of success that honestly has become completely outdated in our current world to one that, when it's managed well, almost always helps women feel like they truly do have it all. And what I've discovered is that there is a sort of theme in place for the women who manage to grasp this really elusive feeling. There's just a few things, a handful of things that they seem to consciously or even subconsciously manage. And when there's too much of one and not enough of another, that's when things start to feel out of whack. But when all three of these are in rhythm, people feel pretty good. So we're going to talk about each one today. And there are 3 practices that we really need to learn to manage. Now, when I discovered these, it was really through my ongoing work with high-achieving women. This was a collection of women whose standards are extraordinarily high. They have expectations of themselves that if anyone can have it all, it's them. And I would count myself in that group of women. It's how I became attracted to that population in the first place. Often women who have been climbing corporate ladders or building businesses of their own. They've entered a stage in life where they're now trying to do that while continuing to take good care of themselves and raising a family. And at a certain point, the balls that they've been able to keep in the air start to drop. The way that they feel about themselves starts to falter. And there's a questioning, like a period of disillusionment that can set in. And that is usually right where I want to intersect with them to provide some perspective on another way, a different way of thinking about what's possible. So today we're going to dig into these 3 practices that, as I worked with women, some of whom were feeling pretty good and some of whom were not, this was sort of the line in the sand. The people who were paying attention to these elements were much more deeply satisfied with the state of their life and much more confident that they were moving it in a positive direction than the others. So here's what we've got. 3 things. The first one, and they're really practices. The first practice that these women are adopting is a commitment to contribute. Okay, so what is contribute? What is our contribution? This is where we are using our gifts and talents in service to others. It's often the work that we say we would do if money were no object. If we won the lottery or if we inherited $10 million, it's the work that we feel almost a deep calling to do, to bring into the world. Often, this is paid work, but not always. Sometimes the contribution that we're here to make is unpaid work. And so we might have a job that we go to every day that's paying the mortgage and feeding the kids, but then there's this pursuit that we're involved in outside of that work that really lights up our whole being. And to me, the magic formula in here seems to be when we're using our time and our energy and our capability to meet a need or to solve a problem for someone else. That's when we experience deep meaning in our lives. So the ways that this one can get out of whack are if we are doing work that doesn't feel like it's really using our gifts and talents, right? We can do it, but we don't love to do it or we don't feel called to do it. Or if we're not clear on how the use of that time and talent is in service to someone else. If it feels like kind of a meh, who cares pursuit, that does not scratch the itch here. Okay, so for this element to be in play in a really positive way, we have to both be using our talents, but also see the connection of how we are therefore in service to others. And often women will describe this as helping people. They see the connection between their work, either very directly or even somewhat indirectly, to truly helping people. And again, if it's not in our paid work, often this can be found in our volunteer pursuits. This is the team that we coach or the girls that we mentor or the community service that we're involved with can absolutely fulfill this need to have contribution, but it has to come from somewhere for us to really feel a sense of balance. Because as fun as it sounds to be in playtime all the time, it really isn't how we're wired. We're wired to make a contribution to the world. And it does not have to be a paid contribution, but it can't be a life that's filled with completely self-centered pursuits and pleasure and really scratch this itch. So that's the first element is having a strong sense of contribution. The second practice that I see in the lives of the women who are feeling the best about the sense of balance that they've struck is connection. That there is a strong give and take in relationships. And when we have really well-honed connections, when we have invested deeply in relationships, and importantly, in authentic relationships, in ones where we feel truly known, where we feel seen, heard, and understood. Often with people whom we would say we love. This is a life that is, lived without loneliness. When we have a life that's rich in connection, we experience that sense of community that's so important to us feeling like we're at home. So what's happening today? Well, what's happening today is the connection that we find is often clouded over by our efforts to protect our relationship, or to protect our image, or even sometimes to appear to be something we're not. So this comes up a lot when we talk about social media and the impact that social media is having on our authentic connections. If the people that you're in relationship with are living on the other side of a computer and the only facet of their life that you're seeing is what they choose to share with you because it's been polished up to present the best possible image, then we're starting to diminish our capacity for vulnerability, for quietude together. We're leaning so far into projecting an image that we are missing those aspects of deep, authentic connection. The other way that I see connection get out of whack is sometimes our connections become very one-sided. And I think this is particularly prevalent with working mothers who are giving to their kids and feel a deep sense of obligation to do so. And by definition, there's not as much coming back in return. Marriages and intimate relationships can be the same way, where a lot of people are feeling like they are giving, and it's a depleting relationship. There's not a lot coming back in their direction. So to get this one cycling in the right way, the relationships that we're looking for are ones in which there's a duality, where both people have the opportunity to share. Both people have the opportunity to be heard. Both people have the opportunity to be in need at different times and to be the supporter in different times. if you check in with yourself on when are you feeling the best, think about just those two practices that we've covered here so far. The state of your contribution. Are you having the opportunity to use your gifts and talents in service to others? And then the state of your connections or your relationships. Is there a strong give and take going on? Now, think about this. If we are contributing and connecting to our full potential, we need extraordinary amounts of energy because we are essentially pouring ourselves into our work and into our relationships. And all of that energy that is going out from us, it needs a source. And the source is within us. All too often, we're running on empty. So this third practice that has to be in play for us to experience a sense of balance is that we need to protect our energy. Okay, this third practice is the one that's there to source and protect our energy. It needs to fuel us. And it is the practice that is really suffering the most in this crazy, busy, FOMO, tech-enabled era that we're finding ourselves in. But if we want balance, we have to learn to do it. And it is to curate our lives, to edit things down to the essentials, and to do that by choice with intentionality. When I use the word curate, curating is about editing in order to create space. Space that's in between all the other elements that remain, so we can more fully appreciate each one. I think of this like if you're shopping, okay, the difference between shopping at TJ Maxx, where everything is crammed on top of each other and the hangers are crooked and you can't really see the fabrics and half of them have been falling on the floor and they're squished together and the aisles are really narrow. That is the absence of curation, right? That is how much can we stuff in, which is how a lot of us are living. Contrast that with something like walking into a Nordstrom store where there are very few items, or a boutique, a small boutique where there's very few items displayed, but each one is given adequate space for you to really appreciate it, to approach it from a distance, to get in close and touch the fabric and to have an experience as you are thinking about purchasing it. Think about how much different it feels when you step into a Nordstrom. You almost breathe differently than when you step into, a store like TJ Maxx or another discount store where everything is really crammed in there. And our lives are the same. When we learn to curate, we have a deeper appreciation for the things we've chosen. We then have this kind of transformation where we realize that we have all the time we need. Time for things that seem impossible maybe today. Time for sleep and time for leisure and time for some breathing room, white space, quiet, being fully present. These are things that women yearn for. We long for them. And honestly, they're the things that we say we want the most. And they are actually within our grasp, but not without curation. Not without learning how to say no to some things so that we can say yes to the most important things to us. Okay, that practice is the one that gives us the space for rest and for, rejuvenation, for things that really fill us back up so that we have more to give. And we are, of all three of these, shortchanging that one by the most in our current era.
Feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
So I'm going to break those down again. The three practices that we need to be adopting if we want to be in a position to truly feel like we have it all. Contribute, really understand what are your unique set of gifts and talents. Where can you bring them to the world around you? Where can those talents be of the most service, of the highest service? Because there is a sort of divine compensation that comes to us when we know that we are using our talents to help someone else. Okay, second one is connection. Are we paying attention to the state of our relationships? Are we investing time and energy and conversations with the people who are most dear to us? Are we clear about who those people are? Do they show up in our calendars the way that all of the obligations show up? And then this third one, which is arguably the most difficult, we have to learn to curate, to take things out, to edit, to get comfortable and confident saying no to some things so that we can say yes to the most important things. And when we do these things, the transformation is almost immediate. It's like the rhythm falls into place. And at a very high level, we're able to sort of achieve this sense of dynamic balance, right? Like almost like we're dancing with it. The exact number of hours may shift from day to day, but we are paying attention to the right big things. And so I would just invite you, if you have been feeling out of balance, out of whack, you've heard yourself saying, like, I just need to get it together. I just need a little time to myself, or I need a little time to get this in order, or I'm just running all the time. Really step back and pay attention to where are you in each of these three areas. We can help you do that. We mentioned this earlier, that if you want to get the rebalancing toolkit, we will take you through an exercise to help you do that. And you can get that at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all. And we'll send that right out to you. It's a really simple way to assess how are you doing in these three areas and where might you need to make a shift to achieve a stronger sense of balance. Now, I want to forewarn you that when you do this, while there are a million really good things that will come from it, there is one kind of ugly green monster that will very likely rear its ugly little head. And it's one you might recognize, because this whole act of curation and taking things out, it runs the risk that someone else will leave them in. And if you are paying attention to that, that can trigger envy in a really big way. So next week, we're going to talk about how to use that envy to your advantage instead of trying to shut it down. It's 100% possible to do that. I think most of us have sort of trained ourselves when we start to feel envy to judge it and to try to shut it down. But it's actually often a clue in your life that if you tune into that signal and pay attention to it, it can provide incredible freedom on the other side. So you don't want to miss this simple flip that we can make to turn envy on its head. And that is, the next episode is all about that. That's what I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you want to get all the new episodes coming your way, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast in iTunes. It only takes a minute to do that. And if you have an extra second, drop in a rating or a review so I know how this is landing for you. I love that feedback. I love to hear from you about how these concepts are landing and what you're doing with them. So that's it till next time. Go be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.